a good gap to make up, but this is certainly putting a dent in things. And if we have a few more active days like this, it's just a matter of time when we get into the swing of rainy season that more and more spots across Central Florida with the updated drought monitors that we get toward the end of the week are going to start to taper back that drought forecast. And then we'll be worrying about a lot of rain in a short period of time, flooding being the concern, primarily isolated flooding with the heavier showers and storms we get in the summertime. That'll be a worry for another day. Let's just get the rain first. I know that's what we all want. Satellite and radar imagery showing still most of that to our north, but look what happens as I zoom this out and show water vapor imagery. Now, our satellite up in space that's kind of locked in on the east side of the United States is showing in the mid-levels of the atmosphere a big dry area. That drier air is helping to suppress our rain chances, and it's in conjunction with the high-pressure system that we're dealing with as well. And even though that drier air is aloft, down at the surface, it still feels humid. Dew points are in the mid-60s up to around 70 degrees, and that's when you start to notice it goes from that moderate category into the sticky, kind of swampy feel when you step outside, and it could make our temperatures feel just a few degrees warmer than what you see. Now, I do want to let you know we're not in the 90s anymore. At least most of us aren't. Lakeland, as hot as it's been today at 90 degrees, 89 in Bradenton, but Tampa only getting to 87 degrees today. We've been on a bit of a trend where we've been below average for 3 straight days, perhaps 4, and moving forward we will be back above that mark to close out the work week, and that 7-day forecast is going to show more 90s could be on the way. Forecast for tonight keeping things mild, light to completely steady winds at time. I wasn't seeing readings much stronger than 1, 2, maybe 3 miles per hour for the most part. It's going to be mild for the morning time as well. A few clouds, but not very many to speak on, and all fair weather conditions heading into tomorrow morning as well. 67 out in Bartow, 71 in Sarasota, Bradenton, and Venice, 64 up in Brooksville, and 67 in Newport Richey. We've got mostly sunny skies again to look forward to tomorrow. The heat will be a bit more significant though, so don't let this catch you off guard. We're going to be between 3, 4, 5 degrees warmer than we were yesterday, and if you live east of I-75, the farther east you go, those numbers just skyrocket. Wauchula into the mid-90s themselves, along with Arcadia, Northport, Lake Placid, and Sebring. Those bright reds are returning to the big map, and that is certainly an indication that we are getting closer and closer to our summertime heat. That big ridge of high pressure is going to stay with us and just build moving into Friday and Saturday as Florida and really the Gulf Coast in general is going to be the epicenter of where that high pressure system is located, and that's where that sinking air is just going to give us those warmer temperatures. Now, highs will gradually rise even higher than 90 moving into Friday and Saturday. That white line on the screen represents where we should be for this time of year. That is right around 88 degrees, and day after day we're going to reach and surpass that mark. Most of those high temperatures reaching 90 as we get into lunchtime, and then closer to 2 to 4 p.m. Those high temperatures in the mid-90s will begin to roll through. Now pair that with the humidity we'll still have in the atmosphere, those dews in the upper 60s, and some of the temperatures behind me could feel a few degrees warmer than what you see there. That's where the heat index comes into play, and that's where you've just got to remember to stay hydrated and take frequent breaks. And make sure you're popping into the shade from time to time, because especially after we've had this little string of temperatures that are below average, it's this heat that can sneak up on you moving into the weekend, and we'll get up to 93 degrees potentially that Sunday afternoon. Boy, that is hot. We're kind of doing a 180 from the frontal system that brought us the cooler temperatures from the start of this week. Now here's that 10-day forecast. I wish I could show you this graph and it would just do a nosedive as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's not the case. In fact, all of the long-range indicators and long-range forecast models also are showing the same similar thing, that highs are going to be likely above average as we get into the beginning, middle, and maybe end of next week's forecast. So the heat is here to stay. We've had our little stint with cooler temperatures, and in the 7-day forecast, no drastic changes on the horizon. We do gradually get up to 93 degrees by Sunday and stay there into Monday and Tuesday. Lows will gradually climb as well. A few spots could see those low temperatures even just bottom out in the 80s rather than the upper 70s. I mean, that's the kind of mild, humid, hot feel that we're talking about. Otherwise, no rain chances on the 7-day forecast either. We still have time though, and remember, we basically reached about what we would expect for the month. Anything past this point is a surplus. Now, we still are facing drought in many spots, so we will gladly take what we can find. I do have a weather trivia question for you. We ask these questions each weekend, and this past weekend I had a challenging one. I'll just go ahead and tell you now, nobody got it right on the show. No producers got it correct. And we had several viewers that actually got this right, and they have seen this pop up from time to time in popular trivia, but let's see if you can get it. The question being, when was the last May hurricane in the Atlantic? Yes, May hurricane in the Atlantic. Was it A, Beryl in 2024, B, Anna in 2021, C, Brett in 1999, or D, Alma in 1970? We're going to send it to a quick commercial break, see if you can get this correct, and when we get back, we'll reveal the answer and also talk about weather that's happening in other parts of the country apart from just Florida. Oh, welcome back, and thanks for sticking around. Before we went to commercial break, I asked when was the last May hurricane we had in the Atlantic? Keyword in the Atlantic, not the Pacific, not anywhere else. We're just talking about closer to home here. And looking at the answer choices, we have Beryl, Anna, Brett, or Alma. The correct answer is, it's not C, which Brianna guessed when we did this weekend. Lloyd guessed B. Anna back in 2021, which I believe was still a May storm, but that was just a tropical storm. The correct answer is D. Alma back in 1970. It has been 55 years since our last May hurricane in the Atlantic. And it's just to point out the obvious that you probably know if you've lived here for a while. Hurricanes in May, highly unlikely or difficult to get to form because there's just not enough ingredients in the atmosphere yet. We're not in the thick of things with the Atlantic hurricane season, and certainly there's typically a lot of shear left in the atmosphere. As we get into June, we occasionally get some stronger systems to form and the odds start to go up. But here's a look at Alma from back in 1970. The interesting thing about this storm, after briefly becoming a Category 1 hurricane in the Caribbean, it did a bit of a loop-de-loop around Cuba and actually made landfall as a tropical depression right here in Florida. Now, not technically in our viewing area, but up into Cedar Key, and that was as a tropical depression back on May 25th of 1970. Again, 55 years since we've had a Atlantic May hurricane, and hopefully we can continue that stretch for many, many, many years to come. The past 5 years, the hurricane season, though, have started rather quickly relative to the June 20th start date that we would typically expect. Now, 2024 was only a day ahead of that average schedule, but 2023, 2022, we're talking early June, 2021 and 2020, mid to late May. We had the season start as early as May 16th back in 2020. So occasionally we get storms earlier in the season. The good news is the earlier storms typically stay on the weaker side. And I say typically. Beryl was an exception last year, but again, that was a little bit later on, not necessarily early June and May like we're talking here. That was more late June. Now, looking at the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, 18 days away, and a lot of questions always of what are the names for this year, so I want to put them on the screen here very quickly. Andrea, to start things off, we go to Gabrielle, Imelda, I'm just pointing out some interesting ones here, Olga, Pablo, Rebecca, differently spelled than I probably would have opted for, Van, and then all the way down to Wendy. I hope we don't have to use Van or Wendy on the list. Barry, Chantel, and Dexter right toward the top. An interesting assortment of lists. Also Humberto there in the middle I see. So no Nash. I'll still have to wait for them to add me in there. I was snubbed by Nestor this year. Moving forward, high pressure still in control here over Florida. Nothing active at the moment in the tropics. And of course, we have our first tropical weather outlook of the year being issued, I believe that's tomorrow by the National Hurricane Center. So it'll be interesting to look at that. Not expecting anything significant out of it, just based on the long-range models that are coming in. And satellite imagery is showing things are nice and dry across our state with just those isolated showers potentially inking their way into the Florida Panhandle. Now up to the north and east, a big stationary front is still set up over the Carolinas, and that is bringing a lot of moisture there right off the Atlantic. More heavy showers drifting into spots like West Virginia, Maryland, which yesterday was bombarded by heavy showers. In fact, check out the flood watches and warnings that are in effect for the region. A flood emergency was issued for Westernport, where they've had the worst flooding basically in 29 years there. A school even had to be evacuated in the middle of town. 200, I believe, people were evacuated by a boat, and it just speaks to how quickly these flash flood situations can set up, especially when you're in the mountainous terrains there up in the northeast. That water has to sink down to low-lying areas, and that can make for a disaster. We saw that with remnants of Milton as it pushed into East Tennessee and the western Carolinas. As we look right now in other spots of the country, it's a little bit cooler up with the rain farther north and east in the 70s and 80s, but look back to Texas. 94 in San Antonio, 100 as you get farther to the south and west, and that has prompted not just excessive heat watches, but also an extreme heat warning across the middle there of Texas. It extends from Del Rio up into Austin, where the heat index could get to or surpass 112 degrees for a very brief period of time. That empty space here looks like it's not populating correctly, but you can use your imagination. Fill in these gaps here with that excessive heat warning. And boy, that is hot. 112 degrees for a feels like temperature for them. Before we send it to a quick break, I'm going to show you a sky camera here. Your hint is we've discussed this place at some point in the show already. It was directly tied to something in this block alone. When we return, I'll let you know where we're looking at here on this sky cam, and also have one last look at your local forecast with how things are shaping up for the rest of this week here in Central Florida. Well, before the break, we were talking about the extreme heat warning that was issued for parts of Texas, and we were having some difficulty loading that actually into the frame. I finally had it loaded into the computer, though, so I want to show you the spots that are outlined in this. Del Rio and Austin included within this rare extreme heat warning for today, where heat index values could reach up to 112 degrees. And that's even could just reach that mark. It could even briefly surpass that mark with today's heat and humidity all clustered in one spot. So definitely take those precautions in that part of the country, because that is just heat that you really have to plan for if you have to be outside. Back to guessing the camera. Before the break, I also showed you this. We have mostly sunny skies in this shot. Beautiful afternoon, I might say. And if anything, your hint should be that temperatures are just a tad bit below average here. A correct answer is Cedar Key, Florida. This is the same spot that Alma made landfall as a tropical depression all those years ago, back in 1970. That was the weather trivia question for today. So give yourself a pat on the back if you got it. I know a lot of Floridians can recognize these cities like the back of their hand sometimes when they pop up on the screen. Well, our beach cameras closer to central Florida also indicating those mostly sunny blue skies. Folks out there enjoying the beach weather on Longboat Key. I do want to tell you, make sure you're slathering on that sunscreen though, because with the lack of cloud cover that we now have, the UV index is still rather high, and you can develop a sunburn in as little as 15 minutes or even less in these conditions. The marine forecast for today was just light chop. I don't see this changing significantly over the next day or so, as winds will be around 5 to 10 miles per hour with the occasional gust, no stronger than maybe 20 for most of our coastal communities. Winds in general over the open waters of the Gulf there at 5 to 10 knots, and a Gulf water temperature now at 80 degrees. How about that? Red tide forecast looking good as well. A lot of gray dots. That means no concentrations found within all those various FWC sample sites from St. Pete down to southwest Florida. Sometimes we look downwind into Naples, Fort Myers, and Englewood to see if they start developing clusters of that red tide, and it often finds its way back up into our neck of the woods. Not seeing any of that now, and the big focus for us is just going to be the high pressure system that's going to be building and keeping all the active weather up to our north. The heat dome keeps high temperatures for us, not just in the upper 80s like today, but back into the 90s sooner rather than later. Here's a look at tonight's forecast to give you an idea of the mild conditions we have on the way. We'll be in the 60s up to the north, but as we go farther to the south, 70s mainly from Clearwater down to St. Pete Beach, Sun City Center right at 70 degrees as well. Lithia 74, coastal Sarasota and Manatee County also along the 70s there. Mayaca City at 66 and Northport at 67. Now, as you go inland and east of I-75, no 70s to be found from Haines City down to Wauchula and Arcadia. We will be under mostly clear skies. There will be some passing clouds, but winds will be rather light tonight. And here's the warm-up I'm talking about. Back to 92 degrees we go by Friday, 93 on Sunday, and it's just one of those stretches where we're getting a preview as to what we can expect almost every day of the summertime. 92 and 93 are even a little bit above average for our summertime heat that we would eventually get to. So just plan on the warmer weather sticking around. It's not going to feel like it's been over the past few days. And the next 5 days of rainfall looking awfully barren. What a lonely map here. Tampa, Miami, completely dry. Maybe a little line of rain could make it up into Jacksonville, but that could even be wishful thinking there. I do think for the next 5 days, the panel should look, yes, I suspected they might look just like this. Completely dry all the way through the weekend. Any outdoor plans you have, plan on the heat. You don't have to worry about the rain chances that may have squandered some plans this past weekend. I know there were lots of games in town, from baseball to concerts that had to be delayed or rescheduled. I don't see this being a big issue for your upcoming week. It's just going to be the heat. And it's not until we get into the very end of this month those chances for rain will start to bump up, and the heat will hopefully begin to ease off the throttle. Although I will say, I've been looking at the extended forecast models, and even beyond this 7-day forecast, I think 10 plus days we could be still sticking with above average heat, barring some frontal boundary doesn't do its work and do its thing, bringing our temperatures back into the 80s. Fingers crossed that happens, and maybe some showers come through to cool us off. We certainly need a bit more relief from the drought, although the beginning of this week was at least a nice dent in a lot of the drought numbers. So that'll just about do it for SkyTower Weather Now. Thank you so much for tuning in for today, and tomorrow we'll be back at it with more updates on what's happening here in Florida, what's happening in other parts of the country as well, and we'll have a fun time with things. We'll show viewer photos as well as some upcoming trivia questions. So thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you again tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Hey there, I'm Fox 13 meteorologist Nash Rhodes, and welcome to SkyTower Weather Now. We're going to talk about your local forecast here in Central Florida, as well as what's happening in other parts of the country. Plenty to get to for today, especially when we get outside of Florida. There's some very active weather shaping up across sections of the Northeast. Also, we've got some fun trivia later on in the show I want to get to, all weather themed, of course. But first, let's send it out to several of our sky cameras in the area. 4-box camera network here at Raymond James Stadium, Steinbrenner Field, Tampa skyline there off in the distance, and also Tampa International Airport. These cameras snap photos every few minutes or so, and I love how this one just happened to catch a plane taking off into beautiful blue skies. I mean, there are a few clouds within this shot, but really nothing that's going to mess with your day. I think we keep rain chances to a minimum for the rest of the afternoon, and it just feels nice and refreshing outside. Folks out there on the jet ski enjoying these conditions, as well as the marine forecast has been pretty good also. It should be staying good for the next few days. Light to steady winds at 5 to 10 miles per hour for the rest of this afternoon.